Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm very glad to be here today with all of you for this interesting event. I'm Valentina Tegas, and I work as Policy and Project Management Officer at EMSO ERIC. Next, please. I would like to introduce the event, just giving you some words regarding the rationale which is behind the workshop. The event has been conceived in the framework of the activities carried out by Work Package 11 in ERIC Forum 2 project, which focuses on the development of a common employment framework for the ERIC's staff. Why we decided to focus on an employment framework? Because we acknowledged during the proposal phase, but even before, the need for a more coherent employment conditions, allowing for an increased mobility and attractiveness of the research-related careers inside the ERICs and the ERA in general. And these are the outcomes also outlined by some of the relevant European documents, such as the Council conclusion in 2021, but also the CERIC report. Today, we would like to fix the most relevant stones for producing a strategic roadmap that can serve as a reference for future negotiations and policy development. Next one, please. We arrived today with a lot of activities already implemented. Just briefly, I would like to illustrate the most relevant ones. In the framework of Work Package 11, we implemented some analysis, especially starting from the results of the most relevant projects related to employment conditions of the ERICs that were ERIC Forum, Accelerate, and Retrain Plus projects. Moreover, we also went deeply in the analysis of the employment conditions in 4 international organizations, which are based in Europe, which are MBL, ESA, ESO, and joint undertakings. And these 4 organizations were selected according to the publicly available source of information on employment practices and rules. Last year, our colleagues from CERIC developed a very detailed survey regarding the status of the employment conditions inside the ERICs. And we also tried to analyze specific cases which are relevant for the employment situations, and from 3 different ERICs that are LI, ESS, and SHARE, and which will be 2 of them will be presented today. Next one, please. Oh, sorry, just one more information. All of these results and activities are embedded in the deliverable 11.1, and you can find the deliverables also in the website of the ERIC Forum. Next one. Okay. Today, we would like to present the main results of the activities performed, but also to fix the steps for the future. So this is why we conceived this workshop as not just as a milestone, but a joining link between the first task and the second task of the work package. Next one, please. Indeed, we would like to embed the outcomes of the analysis performed, the outcomes of the discussions that we will have today this morning, and start drafting a proposal of guideline, a proposal of European employment contract, which will be characterized by a co-design process, in the sense that we would like to involve all the ERICs in the process of the drafting the template. Of course, in those that are available to participate, but in any case, even for the others that are not strictly involved in the work package or just want to be keep updated, we will try to fix some periodical consultation also with all the ERICs. The result will be then presented to our European stakeholders, that in our case will be mainly ESFRI or European Commission. But for this option, my colleague Laura Angeletti will show in a while the different options that we have in mind. And at the end of the day, we have also to present the deliverable 11.2. Which will contain the template of the employment contract and the potential legislative initiatives for the adoption of this template within the European legislation. Next one, please. Okay, that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valentina. I see there is a question by, it was Eva.
Yes, thank you, Ornella, and thank you, Valentina. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
Okay, yes, so one question is about the co-design process. I don't know if you have already methodology, you have thought about the methodology to use. I really would like to understand a bit more what is the methodology, and also the real possibilities for those ERICs, for those research institutions, infrastructures that are not ERIC yet, but are in the process to become an ERIC, to participate in that. Because for us, for instance, in the case of DISCO, we are preparing right now the employment policy, and it would be super interesting to really follow close the development of these discussions, mostly just because we are right in time to implement as much as possible best practices and your knowledge and your experience, of course.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we have started deciding how to proceed with the co-design process. For example, in a while, we will share a Mentimeter, a question, just to prioritize some of the topics that we would like to see in the template of the contract. And the idea is to move step by step, defining the first 3 or 4 priorities, and then work on it, and then maybe having another meeting, such as using the possibility to have these best practices, sharing information monthly available by the project.
Yeah, thank you, Valentina. But then if I understand well, you are considering to do the work mostly within the partners in the project, and not extending the participation to others that are not ERICs yet.
If you want to collaborate, I think there are no problem in accepting contribution, for sure. We can of course involve all the people that are interested.
Thank you.
Of course, we have already done some things, even we will see in a while the results also of the situations of the survey that we submitted. So we have a structure in mind, but of course is open to discuss. Maybe at the end of the day, it will be easy to figure out how to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Valentina, for this introduction that frames a little bit what we have done and why we have done it. I will start showing some of the results. So from now on, we will show you some results we selected, because as Valentina said, this questionnaire was very, very extensive, and for sure the information we have there will help to draft the contract, but of course we could not show everything that was in there. Now, the survey was sent to 27 ERICs. You should think that this was done in May last year. So what we have as results may not be what reflects the situation today. We had a very good rate of response. Actually, 23 ERICs completed the first part and 25 the second. So not all questions were mandatory. We gave the freedom to ERICs to decide what to reply on, and they were not complete, but 25 ERICs overall replied to some of the questions. So we could say that it was a very good response. The analysis took into account, and Laura will show more details on this, but it took into account the type of research infrastructure. So we asked some general questions about how the ERIC was structured, if it was a single-sided, multi-sided, distributed research infrastructure, where the seat was located, where the nodes were located, the number of employees, if they were hired directly by the ERIC or if they were employed by another institution and either seconded or conferred in kind. So there is all this part of general information that again helped the analysis in the end, that was more specific than on each topic of the employment contract. A first result, this is the distribution of countries where ERICs are represented, either hosting a headquarter, and these are the short bars you see in the front. The green is for single-sided or multi-sided, and the second is for distributed ERICs, the red one. And these are the countries hosting seats. And you can see that we have really a very good representation because all European countries host at least 2 ERIC nodes. So ERICs are really widespread. We are also in associated countries, and there are also international organizations that are part of ERICs. So we have a very good representation everywhere. In overall, there are 10 EU or associated countries hosting the seats of the 23 ERICs that replied for this part of the questionnaire. So we could say that we are concentrated overall in 10 countries, and the countries hosting most seats are Italy, Spain, and the Czech Republic. The countries hosting most nodes are Italy, Spain, and the Czech Republic. And the higher number of headquarters are hosted in France with 5, Italy and the Netherlands with 3, 3, and 3. And this again was the picture in middle of last year, because now we know that there were other ERICs constituted, so this has changed slightly. But as you see, some countries have a very good representation. They are hosting either a seat or a node of most of the ERICs. Yes, regarding the number of employees hired directly by the ERIC, so employed directly by the ERIC having a contract with the ERIC. We have, you see, 5 ERICs hired personnel in France and Italy. So if we see in how many countries do we find ERICs hiring personnel, we have 5 ERICs hiring people in France, 5 ERICs hiring people in Italy, 4 ERICs hiring in the Netherlands and Spain. As you see, these numbers do not match the number of ERICs that have the seats in these countries. And I'm anticipating the following chart, which shows that ERICs employ personnel directly even outside the headquarters in different countries. So although 10 EU or associated countries host the headquarters, actually personnel has been hired in 17 countries. From this personnel, one thing that we also thought was significant is that only 2 ERICs declared to have hired researchers. This may not be the full picture, but when we ask the questions, only 2 of these single-sided ERICs declared to have hired personnel. The rest have not hired researchers. If we see how many ERICs employ personnel, this chart shows there are 3 ERICs that do not employ personnel. This means that they are based on in-kind contributions, seconded personnel from other entities. So 3 ERICs do not hire directly. 12 ERICs have employees only in one country. It's not given in one case that country is not the seat, the headquarter. 5 ERICs hire personnel in at least 2 countries. So this means that there are already 5 ERICs that need to hire in another country, which is not the one hosting the headquarters. 1 ERIC that hires personnel in 3 countries, 1 that hires personnel in 5, and 1 ERIC that hires personnel in 7 countries. You can imagine, we are very small. If you see the number of FTEs directly employed per country, it's 1,500 overall in all ERICs. If you remove these very tall bars, which are the single or multi-sided, we are left with a very few employees per ERIC. Sorry. So this means that for a small organization like the ERIC, needing to hire people, so it's not only the problem of how do I employ people in the headquarter, which kind of contract I adopt, but also which kind of contracts do I adopt in other countries, which are compatible with what I have in the headquarters. So you see it's a very high overhead for ERICs, which are small organizations, to think also on this. I will give the word now to Laura to go deeper into the...
Sorry, Ornela,
yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Okay, we would prefer in the end if it's something immediate, otherwise we can...
I'm a bit worried about your data because we fill in the questionnaire. We have, in your data, you have only 1 person hired in the UK, and just Instra had a lot more than 1, then I am not sure what happened. Then anyway, we can come back to it.
Okay.
But you know, if this is made public, our fans are going to notice. They are going to say what happened with everyone else in the hub.
Okay.
May I comment, Claudia? I think what it has been shown is how many ERICs employs and
yes.
not how many employees they have. Because I was also confused.
We employ.
I know, but this is like how many ERICs employs, not how many employees in the ERICs are.
Yes, exactly.
This is what is shown. Yeah.
If you mean this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Yes, these are the number of ERICs.
The ESS doesn't employ people.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you. Sorry, apologies.
Okay, I give the word now to Laura.
Okay. Thank you, Ornella, for sharing the results of the first part of our survey. Now I'm going to go into some more details about the employment conditions which are applied at the ERIC based on the replies that we got from the survey. Please one slide. Thank you. The first information we took into consideration is the application by the ERICs of a collective bargaining agreement, as it is a very important element to set the framework. Collective bargaining agreement indeed provide employees and employers with a well-known and comprehensive framework of the definition of the right and the obligations of the both parties. of the employment relations. They contain a formal salary grid, which is already entrusted by the national and the EU jurisdiction, and we'll see in a while what does it exactly means. And also the same rules of the bargaining assure that the text of the bargaining agreement is constantly updated. On the other hand, due to the absence of a reference collective agreement for the ERICs, ERICs have to apply existing collective contracts, which often do not fully meet the ERIC flexibility needs, as they are not tailored on the needs and on the structure of ERICs or research infrastructures. And sometimes the implementation of some negotiation choice may have onerous consequences for the ERIC organization. Next, please. Thank you. Here we are going into more details about the rate of application by the ERICs of collective bargaining agreements. On the left side, we say that, taking in mind that the full sample of respondents is 23 ERICs, more than a half of them do apply a collective bargaining agreement. More or less a quarter of the sample do not, while we have a significant share of persons of ERICs which do not share this information. On the right side, we have the breakdown of yes replies by type of collective bargaining agreement which is applied, and we see that the relative majority is represented by those which apply NCBA, National Collective Bargaining Agreement. We have also to remind that among these respondents, there are 3 which do not apply any person directly. So this led us to think that the National Collective Bargaining Agreement is applied rather by the sending institution than by the ERIC itself. Thank you. Here we are giving a look to the distinction between distributed and non-distributed ERIC. Among non-distributed, a great majority of them, even if we are still talking about small numbers, declare to apply a collective bargaining agreement of a different level. While among the distributed ERICs, we detected a wide variety of solutions, even among ERICs based in the same country. This is particularly evident in France, which, as Ornella said, hosts 5 headquarters, and Italy, which at the time of the survey release hosted 3 headquarters. One of the main elements of a collective bargaining agreement is the salary regulation. The salary regulation negotiated in and for the collective bargaining agreement is considered as reliable by definition by the national and EU legislation, as the bargaining is held by the collective parties, which are representative of both the employees and the employers. And that's why minimum wages set by the NCBA cannot be derogated in a pejorative sense. This means that ERICs, which do not apply wages which are set up by collective bargaining agreement, have to adopt salaries which are equal or better than those set up by the NCBA in force in the comparable sector. Of course, this can seen also as a competitive tool for the ERICs as employers in the European labour market. closely related to the CERIC regulation, there is the grading system, which is a structure of ranked jobs within an organization, assigning each job a professional value, which is expressed in terms of competencies, skills, ability, responsibility, and experience. And of course, each level is linked to a salary level. This is typically dealt with at the level of contracts or company regulations, and it is a very important element for the career path and the professional recognition, as this is the place in which job titles are defined. We mean here for job titles the name, the conventional name, which is assigned to a profession, which can allow for the recognition of that professions even in different contexts. Of course, a basic structure of grading systems with the homogeneous titles can facilitate interoperability of careers and smooth transition in the ERIC and research infrastructures landscape. Here, in particular, we have to credit the great job done by the respondents in describing for us the type of grading system which is applied in each ERIC. And among the variety of respondents, we could trace back the systems presented to three main models. The first one is structured in categories and levels. Categories represent the broad professions in which persons are organized, are ranked in some way. And levels represent different tiers of responsibility, expertise, or experience. In our context, the broad professions, the most likely professions can be scientific or engineering roles, technical roles, or administrative and managerial roles. And these organizations is also very much in line with the relevant recommendation from the EU bodies. And these progressions from level 1 to level 4 is made by an example just for give the view of the career path within each category, within each profession. This second model is the most applied in Central and Northern Europe. This is often used by universities and research public entities in that region, and this is organized in levels and grades. The levels represent the main grades of possession of key skills and competencies, while the grades represent less pronounced differences, which can allow for a smooth career progression. 10 ERICs out of the 22 respondents declared to apply this system. And the last one, this is probably the simplest one. This is based on macro professional roles, which are linked to a certain degree of responsibility and impact of the position within the organization. This is for sure very suitable for lean and small organizations, but at the same time, career path here may be not that evident. Next one. Talking about career path, we took into consideration a quite technical aspect of this, which is how persons can move from one level to the following. And the most adopted methodology is the evaluation of merit, opted by 18 respondents out of 23. And of course, the evaluation is done against predefined criteria. Almost all the respondents consider the degree of achievement of objectives achieved by the persons evaluated, and other respondents were spread among criteria related to the manner in which the service is performed and or relational or behavioral aspects. Someone also take into consideration the level of responsibility and the impact of the position within the organization, even if in theory these two elements could be more correctly considered at the time of the grading of the employee in a certain position rather than at the moment of the performance evaluation, which is a second moment. Regarding probationary period, here we detected a wide variety of solutions, but we noted an interesting aspect, which is the often relation between the duration of probationary period and the professional qualification and the role. This led us to think that that could be interesting to link in a proposal a set of duration of probationary periods to the set of professions which can be developed in a proposed grading system. Going to the other aspects of the employment relations, we have the working hours, which is one of the few elements which is ruled at the UN level by the Directive 88 from 2003, which set up a minimum set of standards. These standards were indeed far surpassed by the application because they are derogable in a favorable sense for the employees. And at the end, also here, we found a wide variety of different solutions. So in this case, it's probably likely that we will be able to provide ERICs with benchmarks rather than with the reference, but we're going into more details on this later on. An aspect indeed which is very important for the ERIC in this context is the application of remote working, as is demonstrated by the fact that all the ERICs who replied permit remote work with variations in frequency, which can range from 1 to 5 days per week. This is a competitive element for the ERICs in the European labour market, as remote working is an important work-life balance tool. And also we see that the international nature of the ERICs increased a demand for remote work in a different country rather than that in which the headquarters is based. But here we encounter strong limits set by the national taxation system. Leave packages, again, is a matter which is basically ruled by the law, but there are some space for autonomy at the level of the organization level. So at the end, we saw also here a wide range of different durations in terms of the comprehensive leave package. So annual leave plus other treatments. Of course, offering an interesting leave packages is an interesting tool for the competitiveness of the ERIC as employers at the European level, but it has evident effects on the overall balance of the collective or contract or regulation. So it is to be carefully considered. Similar thoughts can be done regarding benefits. Benefits are crucial in this seek of the ERICs of being attractive employers in Europe, and it is demonstrated by the fact that the majority of respondents is already providing employees with one benefit tool at least. The most selected one is private health insurance. Again, given the international nature of the ERICs, a relocation support could be attractive for European workforce, of course, based on a cost-effective evaluation on a case-by-case basis. Finally, still in this regard, we took into consideration the application by the ERICs of a complementary pension scheme. We saw that more or less half of the respondents is not applying a complementary pension scheme, while among those who are using it, 6 out of 9 are using a country-based complementary pension schemes, and only 3 actually 2, because one of those is still in the process of adhering to the fund, are using Reserver. Of course, the adoption of a European pension scheme, of a pan-European pension scheme, would be suitable for the mobility need, which is related to this kind of professions. But we know that Reserver is still finding its feet on the European landscape. Again, this is of course an important attractiveness element, but it is to be evaluated on the possibilities and plans of each organizations. Moving towards the conclusions, the lack of a reference, at the end of this study, we can affirm that the lack of a reference employment framework for the ERICs led to a very heterogeneous approach regarding working conditions. This probably reduced mobility between the ERICs, as can be seen as an administrative barrier towards mobility, and probably it might affect also the chances of professional growth through mobile experiences. So we can confirm the need for a common employment framework for the ERICs, which is indeed what we are meant to do in the second part of our work package, and this should be structured based on a uniform system of dividers, first of all, on the set of a comparable and interoperable career path system. And of course, we would like to provide the ERICs with a framework of standardized approach for employment treatment to be used also as benchmarks to assess themselves among other European employers, in a way which will be further detailed afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. So this leads us to the end of the presentation on the survey results. Are there any questions or any comments or? Yes, Claudia?
Yeah, thank you, Ornella. Very interesting. One thing that came out when we were answering the survey is because of the small numbers of certain things, even when something is anonymous, it's not anonymous. And sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. Like, for example, you show that table and said only one ERIC hired people in the UK, then I know that the ESS doesn't, because we do. Then when you have small numbers, the data is not really anonymous. And sometimes when it's about employment, which is quite a private information for some people, it could be tricky. Then when we were answering the questionnaire that came up, like many of the questions, it's not like we didn't want to answer, but we were worried that if we answer that specific question, it will be clear who we were talking about. Then I was wondering, how was your discussion about how to deal with issues of privacy and on dealing with the information?
Okay. Yes, Claudia. I'm responding to you as we already had the chance to talk about this, and of course your concerns are fully understandable. First of all, as you know, and as Ornella anticipated, we gave to the respondents the freedom of choosing what to answer and what to not answer, exactly for respecting this kind of concerns which may arise in smart context. And of course, the treatment of the replies were completely private, meaning that basically only me have only me. I have the full access to the whole questionnaire. I haven't shared the single answers with nobody. And in the preparation phase, in the design of the survey, we were very careful in not asking for nothing which can be somehow related to private information. The theoretic possibility of tracking the position of the center person, crossing with the gender, crossing with the seat of work of the workplace, in theory could have allowed me to track one specific person. But I can assure that that this was not the aim of the survey, and of course we put the most care possible in avoiding any kind of unintentional disclosure of any kind of information which was out of the extent of this survey, which is understand employment conditions at the ERICs as a whole.
Thank you.
I see other hands. I see Jose Luis and then Eva.
Thank you. Thank you for this workshop. I have one question. And the question is, I miss really two data, so I think is important to me, and I think could be important for the agencies who finance the different research infrastructure. So the first data is what is really the average cost of one position in all the research infrastructure. I'm talking about ERIC, but also the non-ERIC ones. So, and I think this is not really a private information. So for instance, you can get, because I have this data, because I bid myself with the annual report of the facilities. Usually all the ERIC and all the research infrastructure who are not ERIC publish an annual report. And in most of them, not everyone, publish the number of people who is employed by the legal entity and the cost of personnel. I'm talking about cost, not salaries, cost of personnel. So in that, you can get a table about how much is the cost of one position in or every research infrastructure. I think this data is really, really very interesting and could be important because at the end of the day, depend on all the other things you presented, the bargain, the collective bargain, the thing like that. So because in the cost of personnel is included all this, even the different legislation in different countries. I know in France, you are obliged to pay for the, what's called formation permanente. So really the training the people in the position. So, but that make the cost of personnel. the cost of personnel divided by the number of people employed, and this is data usually coming from the annual report, it's not private data, that gives a number who I think is really very, very significant to have a table. The second number that I was really would be interested in is the how can I say? You presented about the probatory period. Okay, to me this. But the other interesting parameter is possible to have short-term contract in every country or in every research infrastructure? So my point is, especially for the research infrastructure, usually a single site, they have to construct a machine. You change the skills of the people along the time. It's very important to have the possibility to have 3-year contract, 5-year contract, and non-permanent one. So my question is, I think it's also complementary data, who I consider very important. But again, it's true that it's only for the research infrastructure who need to construct something who takes some time, is the possibility to have short-term contract versus permanent contract. And for short-term, I'm not talking about 3 months, but I say how much long, let's say until 3 years or 5 years. Because I know the case in some of the research infrastructure were really absolutely not possible. And everyone has to be permanent from the beginning. And this is also, I would say, a parameter to take into account when you have to sit a research infrastructure in one place where you have to construct something will take maybe 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, but you need people with different skills along the period of the construction. So thank you very much.
Okay, may I answer now, or we collect all the answers?
I would say one by one, so yes, otherwise we forget, because there were 2 questions here, actually.
Okay. Okay, I'll go quickly. Regarding costs, of course, this is an interesting topic. We asked for it in our survey, but again, for concerns similar to those raised by Claudia, many ERICs didn't want to share this information because, again, knowing, for example, the fiscal cost, the rate of the employer's cost on the overall labor cost, someone was concerned to disclose some information about at the end the wage of a certain position, which was held by 1 or 2 persons in that specific country. So they didn't feel comfortable in sharing this with us, and we didn't know to force anyone to disclose or to share data that they didn't want. They didn't really feel comfortable in sharing.
Sorry, I tell you, if you go to this public data, this in the annual report, you are not disclosing. And second point, I really have doubt about this approach because it's public data and we have transparency. But okay,
I know. And that's why if we at the end we will decide to really get into the cost issue, we will just use data which are already public, as not to risk to trigger any possible issue like that. And eventually, we are not sure that we at this stage of the work and the proposal, we really want to go into that topic, as the economic management of work is a very sensitive aspect for many institutions, and is very deeply rooted with other elements which have to be balanced together. So probably we don't think for now that maybe there is the ground for getting directly into this topic. And regarding the contract's duration, again, I completely feel the point. This is normally dealt at the level of national legislation. So given that we already ask a lot of work to the respondents, we decided not to ask something that we could easily understand, simply comparing legislations, and at the same time, what is again strictly ruled by the law allows us to a small space of maneuver for proposing something new. So there couldn't be really the opportunity for us of having an impact regarding a topic which is hardly ruled by the national laws.
I only can tell you that really, for instance, in the Scandinavian country, there are no working laws at all. They are only collective agreement.
We could try to find some space for intervention, but normally in Europe, the duration of short-term contracts and the conditions under which you can sign a short-term duration contract are ruled by the law. So we could try to find a space, but we cannot assure any comprehensive and European-based result on this.
I see Eva and Elena, and then, sorry, Claudia, we need to move on because we are already behind schedule otherwise for the case studies. Please, Eva, go on.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the presentation. I think that the questions are response to the objective of the survey. And at the end is what you want to do, have a survey to collect information to demonstrate that you have a case, at least in the way I understand it, that you have a case to go for a harmonized employment rules for ERICs. So in that sense, I think the questions are well focused, and of course there are always missing information, but it's something that you will remediate in the future. But I think that I really would like to have to give you my opinion in 2 points. One is these questions respond to a specific goal, and use the information from this questionnaire for other uses can be a little misleading sometimes, mostly because of the heterogeneity, the variety of the ERICs involved. So you have a lot of centralized ERICs, some distributed ERICs. The situation changes dramatically from those different single site or distributed sites ERICs. So it's difficult to use this information in a fair way for future uses, apart from the survey. At least take into account this potential bias in the future use of that information, just for the best of everybody. And the second point is about something that you didn't mention. Probably you have discussed, but you didn't mention. At least I didn't hear it. Is about something that can make your case stronger, and is if we don't have a harmonized way of leading with hirings in the ERICs across our countries. We can make an analysis of the cost that setting up an administration for distributed research infrastructures that needs to hire directly across different countries means for the ERIC. So the cost of setting up this administration, the difficulties and the challenges of managing this administration per se makes already a very good case to push for a harmonization of our regulations. I don't know if I'm explaining myself. But for instance, in the case of the ELI research infrastructure, when I was working there during the preparatory phase, the most costly activity that we had was just simply set up an administration to have the possibility to hire people across countries. Only that, and also super difficult to align with the regulations in different countries, to be able to have pay slips or simply labor laws or harmonization of labor laws across our employees. Only that was really a nightmare. So only that is a good case to say, you know, this is the situation in distributed research infrastructure. This is the cost that that implies. So that is why we want to go in that direction. That could be something that probably you have discussed, but I didn't hear it.
Okay, if I can reply very quickly to this, Eva, this was not quantified, but it was implicit in the slides I showed where I said this is a very high overhead for ERICs. This is exactly what I meant. Now, quantifying this, so how much it requires in terms of both money and time, because you may have issued also, you may have seen that for some countries it takes several months. It will really depend on the country. We saw that for some it was very easy, for some other countries it was a nightmare and it was very expensive. So again, I don't think we have numbers to quantify and produce something meaningful, because you saw that not all the ERICs hire in different countries. We have some. I don't think that with these small numbers we can make a case, but I think it is clear and implicit that it is a great overhead. It is already to hire, to decide what contract to apply in a single country when we have this variability in the same country and across countries. You can imagine how this problem multiplies if we even need to hire in other countries outside the headquarters. But yes, I don't think that adding a number to that with these small numbers we have would add much to the case. We can, of course, be a little bit more explicit in describing it, for sure. But thank you, it's a good idea. We will reflect if it makes sense. My first approach would be, we have very small numbers, again, 23, and not everyone hire outside. So I don't know if we can make a case a standard case. It will not be a standard, it will depend very much on the country.
Yeah, but at least what you said, Ornella, to make it the point a bit about the overheads a bit stronger, and also taking into account, because I don't know from these 23 how many of those research infrastructures were single site and how many were, I don't remember now. I think that it's also important to understand that if in these 23 you had the majority were single site, then of course you don't have
majority distributed. Yes, okay. There are 4 which are single or multi-sited, intended as more than one country, the headquarters, 4, and the rest are all distributed.
Okay.
So its majority are distributed.
Okay.
Yeah.
In average, inside the S3, 75% of the research infrastructure are distributed.
Distributed, yes.
75%. Only 25 are really single site or 2 sites. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. That's the case here. Elena, quickly, so we can move on. Yes, to the.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. It has been very, very interesting. I just wanted to point a couple of things. One very simple is that regarding the working hours, I miss one in the most important data, that is the annual working hours, because it's the result of the weekly working hours and the holidays, the leave package. So if you have the annual working hours, like it can be from 1,700 to 1,800, you can have a comparable information to compare the different conditions in each ERIC. Okay, that's for just one point. And the second point, maybe is I just raise this concern because it's a condition of the ERIC, is that after doing in our case in LifeWatch ERIC, we have done a compensation policy following basically this the scheme that you have shown with the salary structure, the grading system with categories, levels, etc. But what we find is that we are risking that the salary progression cannot be guaranteed for a long time, considering that the contribution of the countries are stable. That hasn't increased with the ICP. So we cannot guarantee the natural increase of salaries because we don't have increase of the contribution, and the contribution also applies. With this contribution, we also have to pay services and everything. That everything increased, and also the salaries increased, but not the contribution. So we are stuck with that specific point that we have limitation there. You know, I don't know if you face the same situation, or if you are other ERICs are afraid about the same.
Okay. I don't know if my colleagues want to take just a fast reaction on the working hours versus annual, weekly or annual, the leaves. What you mentioned is exactly what Laura mentioned when she said we need to be careful because when we talk about benefits, when we talk about leaves, things are related. And this is also related to the cost that we were mentioning. There are many factors that need to be considered together. So not only the working hours, you said the annual leaves, but there are also special leaves. Some institutions have leaves for other reasons. Some have leaves related to the age of personnel or their familiar situation. So this is why we selected some things to present, and we will be very careful in how we present that. But it's not a one-to-one relation, as you said. It's not this many hours, so this contract is better. These many hours need to be considered together with the leaves, together with other benefits, together with the possibility to work remotely or to have flexible arrangements. There are many conditions that contribute to the attractiveness of the ERIC. Some contracts, for what you mentioned, some contracts are defined by law on a weekly number of working hours. Some are defined on an annual number of working hours. There are these differences, but there are many, many factors that contribute to the final package of whether a contract is attractive or not, and they all are related between themselves. So yes, we need to be very careful in that part of the analysis. The second part of your question, of course, having a framework contract, guidelines, or however you want to call it, according to how far we manage to live, will not solve all the problems of the ERIC. This will not solve the fact that the ERIC can make a wrong decision also in hiring someone. But we are trying, I understand what you mentioned, but that is a different discussion. So how then do you convince the General Assembly that having a career progression or having a salary that adapts to inflation, adapts to the workforce becoming more skilled? I think that's a different, slightly different topic. For the moment, we would be happy if it is understood that this is an element that can contribute to the attractiveness. So proposing a clear career path and a clear grading system is an element that contributes to attractiveness. Then whether that is perceived by the General Assembly as something that needs to be related to the remuneration and that actually requires a higher investment on time, I think that's probably a different discussion to what we can have here.
Okay, I see. I understand, but just wanted to put it on the table.
Thank you.
This is a very important element for experience and to maintain the competitiveness of the organization. Yeah.
However, if somehow that may help, I think this problem is diffuse among ERICs. But I don't know if Laura or Valentina want to add anything to this. Otherwise, we move.
Yes, I think we should move
Yes.
together.
we move to the case study so we give enough time to our colleagues as well to present. So Karin Börjesson, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, from ESS will, yes.
So now I hope that you can all see my screen.
We can.
Great. And I've been asked to present the case of European Spallation source ERIC. And we are well, not single site, but we are one machine being built in 2 countries. So here is an aerial picture of the ESS site in Lund. And we have, as mentioned, 2 host states, it's Sweden and Denmark, and we are in total 13 member countries. The member countries are also in-kind partners, so the European Spallation source is heavily funded by in-kind contributions from the member countries and from regular in-cash contributions from the 2 host countries, Sweden and Denmark. And we are, as mentioned, currently under construction and will soon enter into operations. I have no plans going through how does it work, the aerial picture and the example of a proton accelerator using neutrons in order to achieve science. What I wanted to show with this picture is what is shown in number 6, and that is that the majority of the machine is placed and the site is placed in Sweden. But as you can see in number 6, all the data is sent to the Data Management and Software Center in Copenhagen in order to be stored, managed and analyzed together with the researchers. So ESS is one integrated machine, but it's located in 2 countries with a border in between, with a bridge in between. There was once someone who described the ESS as one body, and the brain is located in Denmark, in Copenhagen in this case. And we all know that the body doesn't function very well without the brain being attached to it. ESS is, we are focusing on material research, and I included those pictures also because the presentation will of course be distributed among the participants, and then you can have a quick look yourself. And also, since we were kind of the outlier in the presentation, I think it was Laura who pointed out that some of the results were well, you can have data with and without the European Spallation source, since we are currently almost 600 employees directly employed by our ERIC. So that means that we are by far the biggest ERIC when it comes to employment numbers. The description of the factual situation, I think that I covered most of it, but it's also then important to keep in mind that it's 45 employees currently employed in Denmark, and that those employees are employed under Danish employment conditions, and the employees in Sweden are employed under Swedish employment conditions. The 2 countries are close to each other in many ways, and the Greater Copenhagen region, as southern Sweden is part of, is a classic cross-border region. There is a very strong political vision that it should be one integrated region with one integrated labor market. And we have, since now 20-25 years, we also have the bridge connecting the 2 countries. So it is in many aspects easy to live on one side of the border and work on the other side of the border. And at ESS, we have currently 60+ nationalities, of which 18 nationalities are represented at the DMSC office. This means that they have people also working we have people working at the MSC living in Sweden, and we also have staff working at ESS in Lund living in Copenhagen and Denmark. The problem or the challenge is that our staff is required to work in both countries. We have, for example, we have instrument scientists. They can be employed in Denmark, but they have, since the instruments are physically located in Sweden, the data collection and the data software and the setup of the data is being done and analyzed in Denmark. However, the actual instrument is in Sweden. That requires multiple travel over the bridge, and it requires quite a substantial number of hours being actually performed in Sweden. And we also have then, of course, the instrument scientists on the Swedish side who needs to go to Copenhagen in order to make sure that the data collection is done in the way that is intended for the specific instrument. A lot of those things can, of course, be done remotely and over Zoom, but there are also a need for the physical interaction and the actual meetings taking place and work being done in each country. And Sweden and Denmark, they have many differences when it comes to the labor law legislation. And there are also limitations when it comes to social security, tax legislation. There are also differences in how a number of working hours in the two countries. There are also differences when it comes to how the taxes are financed, how the social security is financed, and not least the pension, how that is financed. And I also want to mention that since none of the countries are members of the euro, we don't have the euro as our currencies, I meant, then also things like exchange rate plays a significant role. So having a salary in Swedish kroner is different from having a salary in Danish kroner. And with the limitations on working hours in working time in the different countries, in case that there will be a situation where someone works on a Danish contract, they have their tax treaty residence in Sweden, and they work too many hours in Sweden, and they basically fall into the Swedish social security system. Then they will come with a high Danish salary, high exchange rate, and then the Swedish social security charges are significantly higher than the Danish ones. From the employer side, it's from a few hundred euros per year to 31.42% of the gross salary. So it's basically a 31% cost increase for the employer. The proposed solution, from our side would be to have a specific and simplified regulation or legislation for ERICs, meaning that if you're employed by one ERIC, Denmark in this case, or Sweden, then you also belong to the taxation system, social security system, and pension system of that country, regardless of number of days spent in the other country, as long as you are then performing work for the same ERIC. And the ERIC, well, it is one ERIC in both countries, of course. So that is why we had this as a proposed solution. And I've written here that there is similar legislation for example, for governmental organizations, meaning that if you're employed by a government organization in one country and you have extensive number of working days from home or on a business travel, then that will not have an impact on your social security affiliation, for example. I also wanted for completeness to add that within the Öresund area, the Greater Copenhagen area, there are quite generous exemptions already. And with the new double tax treaty and the new social security agreement that came into force by 1st of January 2025, so basically after we did the survey and included the data and started this work package, it is now possible to work up to 50% in the other country without triggering or jeopardizing the social security affiliation. So, but of course, if there is a strict rule that you always belong to the system in the country where you're employed, that would mean that you can work even more than the 50%, of course. Yes, I'm open for questions, comments, suggestions as you want. And while you think about your questions, I wanted to make a quick remark to something that José Luis mentioned. And he said that there is no employment legislation in the Scandinavian countries. I know where this comment comes from, José Luis, but what I wanted to add is that there is employment legislation, but with a collective agreement,
Exactly.
it's possible to make derogations, which is then normally in the favor, so you can have a better agreement. So currently, I don't remember the status when you were part of the CEC, José Luis, but we can now have 3-year contracts at the ESS, unlimited number of 3 years contracts, not putting them after each other. But when I say unlimited, is that we could have 200s of them or 300s of them or whatever we want to. So just couldn't resist making that comment.
Thank you very much, Karin. I would suggest to leave the questions for the end, also of the presentation of Agnieszka, because otherwise, yes, we will not have enough time also to show her case. So I would invite Agnieszka, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Chłoń-Domińczak. Correct me if that was not the right pronunciation, Agnieszka, and yes, I give you the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you see my slides?
Not in presentation mode.
Presentation mode.
Yes.
I thought I did it, but okay, it should be fine right now. Okay, so
fine. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I will present the use case of the CERIC ERIC survey on health, aging, and retirement in Europe. Which is an ERIC which is based in Germany, which I will speak in a second. Just a quick introduction to SHARE. It is a social infrastructure that focuses on studying the effects of health, social, economic, and environment policies over the life course of the Europeans. It is a unique observatory that focuses on the consequences and various aspects of the population aging. We follow people in time, therefore we can also look at people's reactions to policies and events over the life course, and we aim to provide high quality research on the health and socioeconomic living situations of the Europeans. It is the first ERIC that was established in 2011. That means that we were basically learning by doing many things. That also reflects the issues related to the employment policy. What is important, we have 28 countries that participate in the survey. We have less countries that are members of the ERIC, but nevertheless, from the perspective of, let's say, personal involvement, this 28 number matters. And if we look at the employment or the people involved in SHARE, we have around 190 people involved in SHARE. That includes the central coordination, the management, and also country teams. However, the ERIC, I will explain, I will focus mainly on the central team, but also I will speak a little bit about the country teams as well. our main infrastructure are the survey results. So we also cooperate with the agencies that are responsible for the interviewing of individual survey agencies, and that means that occasionally we are a panel survey conducting survey every 2 years. We are also cooperating with those companies and 2,000 interviewers that are involved. However, this is based on the contract between the agencies, so we are not directly involved in employing the interviewers. However, this is our cost as we pay for those. CERIC ERIC has a seat in Germany, that is a host country, and also provides a bulk of financing for the international coordination of our infrastructure. And as you noticed in the first presentation, in the case of Germany, we don't have people that are directly employed by ERICs, and I believe it is I'm Polish, so I'm not that directly involved in the German law practices and legislation, but from what I understand, it is a practice in Germany that the ERICs that have a seat in Germany do not employ directly people, but this is done by another institution that is responsible for the management. Maren, do you have a direct question?
That is not true, because we are also in Germany and we directly employ personnel. So
okay, thank you very much for that clarification. But nevertheless, in the case of SHARE, this is done by another institution. So both the managerial and coordination roles are sort of outside in the scientific partner institutions, and our case study actually fell into the transition process. So before until the end of 2021, both management and international coordination of SHARE was placed at the Max Planck Institute, Munich Institute of Aging, that was in Munich, and from 2022 that has been gradually transferred to a newly established shared Berlin Institute. So as you can understand from the names, that there was a shift of the physical place between Munich and Berlin. Transition was gradual, so actually the full transition to Berlin, including the managerial capacity of the SHARE ERIC, happened only in 2025. So we had a period of a transition. When we look from the perspective of the SHARE Central coordination, before the transition, so until 2022, Max Planck actually funded about 2/3 of the costs of the international coordination and the management of the SHARE ERIC. For that, the Max Planck also received subsidies from the German Ministry for Research, the BMBE. However, some of the funding also came from the research grants related to the infrastructure development. So that added into the, let's say, complexity, maybe not of employment, because employment was based on the Max Planck rules. However, on the stability of the financing of the sources, that also meant that for some of the people involved in the international coordination, the timing of the contracts was related to the timing of the projects involved. So we wouldn't have permanent employment rather than employment of the fixed term nature. We also have a Dutch-based center that is responsible for the software development and data exchange, which is the service-based agreement. So again, we pay for the service, not for the people. And as I have mentioned, we have country teams located in 28 scientific partner institutions. that are responsible of the oversight of the data collection, cooperation with national institutions, and then also research based on the shared data. However, our data is open, so anybody who is employed by the research institution can apply for the use of the data. It is free of charge, and we have, as you can see, almost 19,000 users worldwide. So we have users in 81 countries. In the case of the so if we look at the overall structure, so we have the ERIC, which basically is related to the coordination of the research infrastructure activities. We have the Council, Management Board, Assembly of the country team leaders as another decision-making body, and Scientific Advisory Board. We have the SHARE Central, including the international coordination and administration country teams. We have also area teams and center data that support the development and the data management that I have mentioned, and survey agencies and other subcontractors, which are actually procured by the SHARE Central. So this is an important role of the international coordination. We have centralized procurement for majority of the countries, not all, but vast majority of the countries participating in SHARE, that are supervised by the country teams. It is a lot of, I would say, human effort related to the procurement procedures as such. It is done because SHARE ERIC has a VAT exemption. That means that for the countries, central procurement reduces the cost of a survey by exclusion of the VAT tax. However, it is additional, let's say, human effort and human resources that have to be provided at the international coordination, which also explains the number of people. Our case study focuses also on the transition issue as the move of the SHARE International Coordination from Max Planck to the SHARE Berlin Institute, which is a limited company established under German legislation, was complicated both from the governance and day-to-day management perspective. So this is something that I would say mature ERICs or ERICs that go through the transition stage need to consider. A little bit of an explanation. The establishment of the SHARE ERIC with Max Planck was related to, was also linked to the fact that the managing director of SHARE ERIC until the end of 2024, Professor Axel Borsch-Suppan, was a director at the Max Planck. Axel reached his retirement age, which meant that we need, the SHARE and Max Planck and everybody needed to follow the retirement procedures that are envisaged for the SHARE, for the Max Planck directors. That means that the entire laboratory or the team of the director is also dissolved upon the retirement of the managing director. Therefore, the idea was to develop and establish a permanent place for SHARE, which is the SHARE Berlin Institute. It is a separate legal entity with its own governance structure, including also shareholder assembly and the supervisory board. And SBI was established by 5 scientific or research-oriented institutions in Germany, and as I have mentioned, placed in Berlin. The SBI director is a member of the SHARE ERIC Management Board, and also from 2025, he is the SHARE ERIC Managing Director, reporting to the SHARE ERIC Council. At the same time, he also reports to the SBI shareholders and the SBI Supervisory Board. So we have a situation when there's one person with 2 hats, I would say, and 2 distinctive responsibilities that have to be clearly identified. If we look at the practices compared to the guidelines of the ERICs, we see that the practice of the share ERIC shows that the various options of employment can be applied with those broad guidelines. So the transition that we have observed between Munich and Berlin, between Max Planck and Share Berlin Institute involved many challenges. So first, it is a team of people that is placed in a certain social context, their families, children going to schools, older parents, which means that we needed to deal with the fact that there would be more let's say distant work and online work for some of the people. So at the moment, indeed, within the Share International coordination team, we have still the majority of people which are placed physically in Munich or around Munich, and they are performing their work for the SBI in an online mode. So this is a challenge for the management of the team. Also with regards to some of the practicalities like funding the travel between Munich and Berlin is not possible because people are formally employed in Berlin and meetings have to take into account this specificity. But also team working and team building is something that requires attention. Finally, last but not least, there are also differences in the level of average salaries and the cost of living between Berlin and Munich. So when we have a situation that we there is a transition, so a person that leaves Share is replaced by a person employed in Berlin, that also means cost differences. But in general, the salaries and wages in Berlin are lower than in Munich, so this is also affected. Another challenge that we had, and this is also I saw that OHAD is a part of our seminar that is also related to some of the legal issues and related to the financial supervision, was that we needed to ensure an independent financial supervision of the Share ERIC EU-funded projects. Because if the ERIC is the project coordinator, Share Berlin Institute and any other affiliated institutions are indeed affiliated. That means that for the financial team that during the transition period, we encountered a situation that the financial people were employed by the Share Berlin Institute, and at the same time, they were responsible for the supervision of the financial management of sort of as a part of a Share ERIC, also for the Share Berlin Institute. So that raised the risk of the potential conflict of interest related to the grants where Share Berlin Institute was affiliated institution and Share ERIC was the project leader. So in the transition period, that led to a very specific situation in Share, that we actually had 2 employees employed directly in the Share ERIC, and this was the financial team of the 2 employees, financial manager and an accountant. Again, that was a very specific situation that caused a lot of additional sort of financial and the personnel management activities. From 2025, the financial management is back transferred to the Share Berlin Institute following the completion of the transition process, but still that means that we need to clearly define the roles of the financial management, especially with regards to the EU grant, so that it's all transparent. So these were the changes that affected the employment practices, relations between the teams and the people, that had a real impact on the personal development in SHARE. As I have mentioned, we have also the country teams. The country teams are responsible for the country-specific adaptations to the questionnaires, also translation of the questionnaire, supervision of the data collection, day-to-day contact with the survey agencies, and help in the database construction on the country-specific matters. In each country, we have at least 2 people involved. This is the country team leader and the country team operator. They are usually employed at the SHARE scientific partner institutions in the respective country. So they follow the rules of the employment in their countries. They are delegated to the tasks that are related to the development of the SHARE ERIC infrastructure. In some cases, especially in those countries that don't have their own national funding for the SHARE, we also have EU grants that enable to finance the salaries of the country team operators through the grant. So this is the case in which the SHARE ERIC, as the grant coordinator, provides funding to the scientific partner institutions for the employment of those people that are based on their own national rules. We have also area teams supporting the specific areas. Again, this was done by the scientific partner institutions, and until 2024, that was also financed from the infrastructure development grants that were coordinated by the SHARE ERIC. So again, without employment, but SHARE ERIC through the grants provided financing for the employment at the national levels. Summing up, the SHARE ERIC is an interesting case of employment where the employment is, as a rule, not a direct employment at the SHARE ERIC, but through the scientific partner institution in the host country, but also in the participating countries, if we take the extended SHARE employment. Our experience shows that there are challenges related to the transition, employment contracts, organization of work, as well as independence of the financial management of the SHARE ERIC and international coordination. We also find that indeed the challenges related to the personal unions of the SHARE ERIC managing director with the role of the SHARE director of the SHARE Berlin Institute at the moment, but earlier, of course, also the director at the Max Planck is important to sort of look at the terms of reference, how we specify responsibilities, and how we ensure that the SHARE ERIC is managed in a way that is, I would say, transparent and independent as it should be. While we have a solution that provides at the moment the stable long-term functioning of the SHARE ERIC, with a little asterisk that SBI is still on the road to have the permanent funding through the German Ministry of Research. The practical challenges related to the division of roles, responsibilities, provided indeed a lot of the necessity to have special solutions, especially in the interim period. So even with, theoretically speaking, defined role in the employment, as you can see, the transition can create a lot of issues related to the employment, organization of work, and personnel management. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Agnieszka, for sharing a very complex situation. Also, Karin, thank you very much both for sharing your cases, which we hope will serve also for the others as inspiration, also to see how you dealt with them. Are there any questions? Okay, I don't. Yes, Eva.
Sorry, I didn't find the hand. So my question is to Karin about the proposal she presented to change to improve the situation around the working conditions. I don't know if we can share the slide again, but my question is very simple. You have this proposal, probably an internal discussion in the ESS to prepare this proposal. And now, what is the process? What do you do with this proposal? You talk with the national authorities in both countries. What is the process to move forward?
Yeah, I think that the process for bringing it into this forum was basically to benefit from the ERIC Forum project in order to get some leverage on this question. So at the moment, we are not driving this particular question, but I would say that we have been quite active in the changes when it comes to, for instance, changing the Öresund agreement, changing the social security agreement. So we have been working in the past years. We've been very active in different forums and different formats. But now bringing this to this table was simply to see if the ERIC Forum could bring something to the discussion. So we are currently not doing much about it, also because the 50% provides quite a good working flexibility for our staff.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I would propose that we have a break. Shall we have 10 minutes break? So we don't delay too much. Before we leave for the break, I would like to share with you a Slido. We will not resume at 10:50 at this point. We will resume at 10:55, sorry. Here, if you can scan this now or when you come back, we would like to hear your opinion about which areas of the employment contract we should be prioritizing. As you saw, there are many, Laura showed, there are many elements that can be analyzed. Which ones do you think are the most important or the most relevant to prioritize into advancing a proposal for the employment contract? Thank you very much and see you in 9 minutes now.
Hello, I think we are here again. I think we can start with the second part of the workshop. And I would like to thank Dario Capezzuto, Policy Officer from European Commission, who will shortly present what the European Commission is currently doing respect to the research careers by introducing the research comp document, and I think also touching upon the support that the European Commission is giving for the research management tool and related research management comp. So Dario, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I will share with you my presentation. So if you hold on for a second, I will hopefully manage. So I'll put it in presentation mode. Can you please tell me if you see it in full screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, then I will try to switch. So one moment. So this I share like this, and so normally I should now try to switch screens. Okay, you still don't see it in full screen, right?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. And let's see if I right now.
No.
No. Okay. Well, then I will try to do something else. So I will do like this first, and then start sharing now, and let's see if this way it works.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Perfect, thank you. All right, so sorry about this, but with technology and when using two screens, it's always an issue. I will start with some background and policy context about what we are doing for research careers at EU level. In this first slide, you see a little bit of numbers on researchers in Europe. In particular, you see that we have reached the impressive number, I will say, of 2 million researchers. There was a sharp increase since 2012, 45%, which is a very good increase even compared to competitors such as China and the US. And when it comes to the number of researchers, we are talking about 1% of the total EU labor force. What kind of challenges are we addressing when we work on research careers at EU level? We are addressing issues such as recruitment and working conditions, precarity, the need to ensure financial well-being, the need to respond to the labor market's skill needs, to foster intersectional mobility, to improve the assessment and reward system, and also to have a better balanced circulation of talents. All of these challenges, we are trying to address them in the context of the ERA policy agenda. The ERA policy agenda is a set of actions that are implemented in order to strengthen the European research area. We had a first cycle of the ERA policy agenda from 2022 until 2024, so it was just concluded. Over there we had an action on research careers, it was action 4, and what you see on screen is what we have done in the context of this action 4. I said that this cycle has concluded in 2024, but it doesn't mean that we are stopping working on research careers. We will continue also in the next cycle of the ERA policy agenda, which will run from 2025 until 2027. In particular, we are waiting for the adoption by the Council of a Council recommendation, which will include the new actions, including one on research careers. But let me focus now on what we have done until now. You can see on screen that we have worked along 4 main pillars. One was to set the standards at European level for research careers. In particular, we had the adoption of a Council recommendation on a European framework for research careers, including the new European Charter for Researchers. So these are what we consider the new standards for research careers in Europe. Of course, we need to foster the implementation of them. So we have put in place or reinforced a number of instruments, including, for example, a mutual learning exercise supported by Horizon Europe to foster the exchange of good practices between member states, Research Comp, which is a European competence framework for researchers. I will say a few words on it later on. A one-stop shop for researchers and research organizations, the so-called ERA Talent Platform, an observatory on research and innovation careers to have data that can be used for evidence-based policies. Resaver, which has been further enhanced, same thing as Euraxis. So you see a wide range of instruments to support the implementation of the new standards for research careers. A third pillar relates to the reform of research and researchers' assessment, which is currently being taken forward by the QARA. And this is linked actually to another action of the ERA policy agenda. And then we have a strand on investments with a pilot under Horizon Europe 2024, which has already been launched. In fact, there were already evaluations of proposals and projects on this so-called talent ecosystems call will start around the summer. Let me now dive a little bit more into the Council recommendation on research careers, because as I explained, this is really fundamental in our view for improving research careers in Europe. It is articulated along 8 pillars that you will see here on the screen. And I will move quickly to the next slide because I will go into more details on the 8 pillars. So the first one is on definitions. Here we have of course, the definition of researchers, because the main focus of the Council recommendation is on researchers, but we also took the opportunity of this Council recommendation to offer a proper recognition to other very important professionals, as you know, because they are very relevant, I think, in the context of ERICs, and these are research managers, for which we have an approximate definition because the aim was rather to give recognition. And what the Council recommendation says is that research managers or research management careers should be adequately framed and recognized at EU level. And there is also a set of tasks that are mentioned in the Council recommendation as a sort of non-exhaustive list of tasks for research managers. There is also a definition of research technicians, which highlights also the fact that they perform tasks requiring high level of technical knowledge, training, experience. And in this case, the Council recommendation says that member states should consider to adequately frame and recognize research technicians' careers at national level. So we have this difference in terms of work to be done. Research management, since it is more advanced, or it was more advanced, a little bit more advanced at European level, there is a reference to framing and recognizing at EU level, whereas for research technicians, the reference is to do something at national level. We also have revised R1, R4 profiles with some examples of occupations linked to these 4 profiles for researchers. And then we have another pillar, which is on the recognition, interoperability, and comparability of researchers' careers, focusing on an equal esteem and reward for different career paths, and also on a wider use of R1, R4 profiles by human resources offices. A third pillar is on recruitment and working conditions. Here we have, for example, recommendations on open, transparent, and merit-based recruitment. We have references to attractive working conditions, including remuneration, job security and stability, social protection, including the promotion of resaver, and then equality and inclusiveness, and specific measures and incentives for early career researchers. A fourth pillar is on skills to support all kinds of mobility. And here there are recommendations to reinforce skills, in particular, I will say not only research specific skills, but also transversal skills based on the European Competence Framework for Researchers, therefore Research Comp, and also to foster innovation and an entrepreneurial mindset in researchers. Fifth pillar is on assessment, in particular on recognizing all mobility experiences, and also to have a reformed assessment system that takes into consideration not only publications but the wider impact of research on society. And then we have a pillar on balanced circulation of talents in order to make the Union an attractive destination. Here there are recommendations to member states to make research systems more attractive, and there are also recommendations to the Commission to foster the exchange of good practices by member states, for example, via mutual learning exercises, and also to monitor flows and facilitate the attraction and return of talents. Finally, we have two pillars focusing on strengthening or introducing actions for to support research careers. So, for example, strengthening your access, developing the ERA Talent platform, and also introducing a new European Charter for Researchers to replace the old Charter and Code adopted by the Commission in 2005. Finally, very important, the aspect of monitoring research careers, and this, as I said early on, will be done through a Research and Innovation Careers Observatory currently being developed by the OECD with support from Horizon Europe. The aspect of skills, as I said, is pretty important in the context of this Council recommendation because skills are considered as a very important tool to support researchers' careers in all sectors. And that is why we have developed Research Comp, which is the European Competence Framework for Researchers, which puts together 38 competences, transversal competences that researchers are encouraged to develop in order to be able to transition more easily between sectors. So this is the first competence framework that we have launched. It has a dedicated website. I say first competence framework because I will mention later on that now there is another brother or sister of Research Comp, and which is dedicated to research managers. How is or are these competence frameworks structured? As you can see here, there are 7 competence areas, each of them including a number of competences. So you see on this slide that I made a reference to the 7 competence areas, to the 38 competences with descriptors that come for below the competence areas, and then each competence can have 4 proficiency levels, so from beginner up to advanced, and then there are learning outcomes for each proficiency level of each competence. I didn't include additional slides here just because I didn't have enough time, but if you go on the website, you will see what I mean. I also wanted to say a few words on Resaver because I think this is really important in the context of ERIC's Resaver, which is a pan-European occupational pension solution for research and innovation organizations and their employees. Resaver is now part of the ERA Talent platform, which is this one-stop shop for researchers and research organizations. In fact, you see here part of the ERA Talent platform with Resaver highlighted. What I wanted to say is that within ERIC's, I think it is already an instrument which is used by some of the ERIC's. I'm not in charge of Resaver, but my colleague told me about this and shared these slides with me. But certainly this is something very important for researchers who are mobile as certainly in the context of ERICs. So it is an instrument that certainly would deserve, where possible, will deserve implementation at the level of ERICs. I say where possible because it is operational only in some member states. I think it is 7 member states, with Spain and Czech Republic coming as well. So it will be 9, but certainly a very important instrument for ERICs. What is coming next in addition to the ERA policy agenda for the cycle 2025-2027 is also the ERA Act. The ERA Act will be a legislative document which has been announced in the recently published Competitiveness Compass, and the focus of the ERA Act will be on strengthening research and development investment in order to reach the target, this famous target of 3% GDP at the level of member states. And then to focus research in strategic priorities and reinforce alignment between what is done at the level of EU and member states. And 1/3 strand will be on fostering the circulation of knowledge and talents across Europe. So the ERA Act, well, we are still at the very initial stage, but the ERA Act will also try to address challenges pertaining to researchers' mobility across Europe. Finally, a few words on Action 17 of the ERA policy agenda, which is the action that until now has been devoted to strengthening research management. So what has been the objective? It has been to strengthen the capacity for research management in Europe, and in particular in terms of recognition of the profession, upskilling, networking, and capacity building. Very important, I think, deliverable in the context of Action 17 has been the creation and the launch of this new competence framework, in this case for research managers. So once again, I invite you, if you want to discover more, to go to the website of RMComp. And the work on supporting further research management careers in Europe will continue also in this case in the context of the new ERA policy agenda 2025-2027 with the objective to offer or give improved recognition to the profession, and basically to go a step forward compared to what has already been done in the current ERA policy agenda. In terms of expected outcomes, there will be the implementation of an evidence-based awareness campaign, which will be actually already launched at the end of I think in a few weeks at an event in Madrid that my colleague responsible told me about, but right now I don't remember exactly the details. But also very important, there will be the co-creation of a European Charter for research managers. So you see that also for research managers, now the work is going ahead, more or less following, I will say, the same path that has been followed for research careers. And I think I already exceeded my time, so I will stop here, but of course, happy to contribute to the round table. And before that, actually, if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Dario. Thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions for Dario for the presentation. Otherwise, I would open the round table, and I would call our next speakers on our virtual stage. So Laura Angeletti, Dario Capezzuto again, and Ohad Graber-Sandri. Ohad is international lawyer with a wide experience in legal governance and management of research infrastructure and ERICs. And I think that the roundtable can start with a short presentation from Laura as a setting the scene for the discussion. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valentina. I'll try to share my presentation. So. Okay. Do you see my presentation in presentation mode?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. I am Laura Angeletti, independent legal counsel, and I am supporting CERIC ERIC for the activities related to the execution of the Work Package 11 of the ERIC Forum project. Now I'm going to present the brief to outline the main contents of the proposal of Work Package 11 for the second part of the project, the task number 2. Which is aimed at develop a unified employment treatment for the ERICs at a European level. Our proposal is as a two-folded structure for aspects which are governed by national laws. We will aim to provide a set of benchmarks to the ERICs in order to assess themselves as employers in the European research labour market, and more specifically in the ERIC and research infrastructure context. While for aspects which are not directly governed by national laws, we would like to exploit the space of maneuver which is left by the law for developing a reference framework of employment treatment, which is aimed to be directly applicable for the ERICs who want to do so. Method-wise, we would like to share and co-design our proposal with all the ERICs with a periodic consultation method, and each ERIC at the end of our work will have the autonomy of choosing if and how to apply the employment treatment set by our proposal document. As was already mentioned before, and also by Dario in his insightful presentation, greater uniformity in employment treatment can support the mobility of professionals across ERIC and the research infrastructures, talking about researchers when it's the case, but also research managers and all the professionals which support the performing of research. It can enhance a better recognition of the professionality of ERIC personnel, and it can also support the ERIC management, particularly for recently based ERICs or ERICs to be. Furthermore, the adoption of attractive employment conditions could boost the competitiveness of the ERIC as employers in the European research labour markets, and it can also help the talents retained by the ERICs. As shortly mentioned before, of course, we will have to consider each topic of the employment relationship diversely based on the fact that they are ruled by the national law or not. So based on this basic distinction, we will divide the topics among those for which we will prepare a reference treatment and those for which we will prepare a set of benchmark. Referring to the first group, we would like to provide the ERICs with the reference treatment regarding hiring policies, probation period, job classification, career path. For work schedule, we would like to suggest a set of benchmarks, while for hours flexibility and remote working, since it is a matter which is ruled on the on the organization's level, at the organization level, we would like to provide a reference directly applicable. For annual leave and temporary leaves, we would like to provide benchmarks in order to allow the ERICs to assess themselves in respect to the general landscape. For benefits and trainings, we will be able to provide some reference treatments, as well for the management of an eventual independent HR reference persons in the organization. For the adoption of the support of a complementary support pension scheme, for the reasons that were explained before, we would like to propose to the ERIC a set of benchmark. After the termination of our proposal, we think the first thing to do is to give to our proposal a proper dissemination. This can be done through the ERIC Forum Project Toolkit, the publication on the open access relevant sources such as Zenodo. We would like to have it shared also with the delegates of the ERIC General Assemblies and with the DGRTD, which is the relevant direction at the European Commission for research careers. After that, since one of the aims of our project is also to explore the path for a legislative initiative for following up the elaboration, the developing of our proposal with the implementation, we started now identifying some possible frameworks in which our proposal can be integrated. On the EU bodies side, we thought about the possible integration or mention by a European Commission soft law document or some kind of coordination with one of the directions on research careers or strengthening research infrastructures. While on the ERIC framework, we identified as possible path a mention in the ERIC practical guidelines, even if we know that we would be here quite tight on time all the time, since the updating of the guidelines is about to be closed. It would be interesting also to have it mentioned or encouraged by the regulation, which could be somehow reopened, even if in a tailoring way soon. And also we will start exploring the option of having it attached to the ERIC statutes. This path, we think that each of these paths have some pros and cons and some things to be taken into particular consideration. So, as probably Valentina, my presentation is not. Do you see my presentation changing? My slide changing? Okay, I don't know why. I'm not able to.
We are still in the slide towards the legislative initiative.
Okay. Now it worked. Okay.
Okay. Now it's working.
Okay. Sorry for this. Well, I was just saying that we are trying to identify since now which are the main pros and cons and the things to be taken into consideration for each path, and probably it would be this roundtable would be the right moment for starting shaping the path forward with our distinguished invited speakers in order to gather these feedbacks and on the proposal and to start thinking on how to establish the foundation for a roadmap towards the implementation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Now I think we could animate a little bit the round table with some questions that we would like to address to the speakers. Specifically to Dario, I would like to ask one specific question regarding our activities and maybe your suggestions. We will try to draft a treatment of employment references in a way that is as consistent as possible with the European standard, with the relevant European standards. If this is the case, do you see any other scope for integration between our proposal and the European Commission existing or planned action on research careers?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Laura, for your presentation, which is very, very interesting. And as I will say in a moment, it indeed is very, very relevant in the context of what we are doing at European level. So I mentioned what we have developed in the context of Action 4, this set of measures based on the Council recommendation and on the new Charter for researchers. And what we are doing now is to support the implementation of these new documents based on the instruments that I presented, but also based on some concrete documents that can help member states and stakeholders at all levels. So we are about now to finish a mutual learning exercise on research careers, which involves member states, but in the context of the new ERA policy agenda action on research careers, we want to further support the implementation of the Council recommendation and of the new European Charter for Researchers by stakeholders. So what you are doing is fully in line with our objective of the objective that we are pursuing. But I think it can also be very important, not only because it is aligned with these new documents, but also because it could actually be somehow considered in the context of what we will be developing in the context of the new ERA policy agenda action. Right now, we are thinking about developing some guidelines, recommendations, some communities of practice that can support stakeholders in implementing the Council recommendation and the Charter. So what you are doing can be extremely relevant in that context, because what you are doing in terms of reference framework for employment of researchers and other stuff, we can actually use it, I believe, as an example. So you were mentioning in your slides that you intend to share with us what you are developing, and I am indeed very interested in receiving this because we can certainly use this in the context that I described. Perhaps this could also be important in the context of the upcoming ERA Act, but I will not discuss further about it, at least not at this stage, because as I said, we are at a very initial stage. So I cannot say or promise anything, but certainly this is input which can be really important for us, because the ERA Act will, as I said, also focus on supporting mobility of researchers in Europe, addressing challenges that can be addressed through legislative intervention. And so what you're working on is extremely relevant in that context. And I hope that this answers your question.
Thank you very much, Dario. Yes, we have discussed how to meet the time schedule, but yeah. Now I have a question for Rohat. Rohat, as mentioned in Laura's presentation, our proposal necessarily operate within the limits set by the national laws and the European labor law systems and the ERIC regulations, the ERIC organizational autonomy, sorry. How do you see it from a European law perspective?
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'll begin with thank you for the invitation today. It's really a pleasure to be here and to listen to the progress and having read the report as well. So it's really a pleasure to be here. By way of background, I'm the founder of Ex Officio, and we work, while we are not really expert in labor laws, so that's the usual disclaimer here. So it is not, whatever we discuss now is not really a specific legal advice, but and we are not familiar with all the labor laws in the countries. But having worked with several ERICs, we have seen, you know, similar challenges which are common to ERICs, and many of them appear also in your report. So maybe I could add to the discussion a little bit in terms of just setting setting the scene from a regulatory perspective, because that's also very important to understand where are the limits of what we can do and what is the right way to do things if we intend to, as you mentioned, you know, a legislative initiative, or what's the best way forward, whether it's through ERIC practical guidelines, as you said, or ERIC regulation or ERIC statutes. And in this context is probably important to understand that, and Dario probably may step in as well, I'm sure he's familiar with this. The way the European Union is structured is such that the European Union, the Commission does not have absolute power to regulate whatever they wish to do. There's something which is called, you know, they have conferred powers to address issues. And the conferred powers means that they have what we call competence to address certain things. And this competence to address an issue is then, it can be either an exclusive competence of the European Union, or a shared competence, meaning together with the with the member states, or a supporting competence. And in some areas, they don't really have competence to regulate. So I don't here to provide the answers where the Commission has competence or not, but I'm just saying that in terms of expectations. So if let's say one of the conclusions is that we would like the ERIC regulation to include an exemption not only from VAT, but also for personal taxation, like we have in international organizations, right? That's usually incentives to come and work for ERICs. It will attract more talent because they will not have to pay tax. That is something that we need to analyze, whether it's something within the competence of the European Union to do, whether they can at all address this issue, or whether this is something which is outside the scope of what they can do. And I suppose that part of the work that also Dario mentioned is to identify issues that fall within the competence of the European Union in order to, you know, to correct these issues and to take it, to adopt measures. So when we speak about that, it's important to remember that coming back to the point, the European Commission does not have competence to address everything. And in some areas, when it comes to labor law, often is a shared competence between the European Union and the member states, meaning that the European Commission or the European Union comes up with a legislation which sets, usually it would be the case, minimum standards, certain minimum standards. For example, we mentioned here issues such as, you know, what was it? Probation period, right? So that is, there's a minimum standard by the European Commission. And then the member states may need to national legislation needs to abide by this standard, but they can also improve it if they wish to. And the 6 months, if I'm not wrong, once again, I'm not expert on specifically on labor matters, but the 6 months, I think, probation period is the standard, which is set by the European Union. And in some member states, you will find that standard 6 months period. In some others, you will find shorter periods. An exception is maybe the joint undertaking, but that's not really that's a European Commission entity, something different. So coming back to your question, having this in mind, what's the best way to address the ERIC practical guidelines or the ERIC regulations or the ERIC statutes? I think it will depend on what we're trying to achieve and the topic that we pick up. And you've, you know, in the previous slides, we have a list of different topics that you have identified. And we may want to think whether that is, you know, have a case to argue that this issue linked with article, the ERIC is also, sorry, in brackets, the ERIC is also established on the basis of Article 187 in the EU Treaty, all right, which the article provides the European Commission certain powers to set up certain legal entities, such as a joint undertaking and also an ERIC. So they have the power to set up the ERIC, but they don't have necessarily the power then to, insert everything into the ERIC regulation. So that's what I'm saying, that we need to identify correctly where is the competence. Is it the European Commission? Is it the member states? Is it something different? And according to that, try to adopt a strategy how to address it. So the ERIC regulation, it will be in any case a long process, and it could be tested for several of the, maybe one or more of the topics we have here. The practical guidelines is a sort of a soft law element, and the European Commission specifically says it's not binding law. So I think there things like best practice could definitely be included in the practical guidelines. You can also add things like, best practice or things like on gender equality, pay gap, certain hiring procedures which are sort of standardize it for the ERICs to be able to to follow the same things and to make it basically standardization of whatever is called related to the ERIC. The ERIC statutes, once again, is a regulatory act in its basis because it's published. Maybe that would be probably a less appropriate place to insert more than we have. We already have a reference to an employment policy, right? We have employment principles and we have an employment policy in the statutes. Most ERIC are adopting and should adopt a separate employment policy. That is an area where I think could be standardized a bit more on the employment policy and receive, to get to promote these issues. Bottom line, it's a mixture of steps that could be taken, but it's very important to remain focused and to understand the regulatory framework in which we operate. Thank you.
Thank you, Had. Thank you. I don't know if Laura wants to comment on that. You're muted, Laura.
Okay, sorry for this. I was taking notes of the replies. Yes. First of all, thank you for the order of the interventions. Thank you very much, Dario, for your feedback about our proposal, and of course we would be excited about sharing with you and your department the outcomes of our work, and to explore any kind of possible cooperation in this sense, and also for the upcoming activities. And thank you very much, Ohad, for your detailed framework of the possible options and path for the prosecution of our work. I definitely agree that before starting each action and initiative, we have to carefully consider the extent of the competencies of the tool of the legislative body that we would like to involve in our project. And I agree on all of your on all of your notes. I would just like to ask you a little bit more explanation about why the statute could be the less appropriate place for including a proposal to a unified employment treatment, not mentioning perhaps attaching it to the statute as it is, while rather including a reference maybe in the statute to the application of a uniform employment treatment for the ERIC, or some hook that can be placed in the statute for strengthening our proposal. Thank you.
Yes, it was. This was a question for me, right, Laura?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I don't say it's not possible to include a reference in the statutes. I think what would be the the most we already have in the statutes an article which is stating employment policy.
Yes.
And there we set, usually it sets out basic principles, and also referring usually the national law where the employment takes place will apply, and then setting out principles. So I see no harm in including a reference to there. You could also include a reference to the European Charter for Researchers, for example, in the statutes. You could do the same with many documents. So I think it's possible. It's nothing to prevent that from doing it in the statutes. I would leave it at the level of a reference, or you could say you already usually refer to the employment policy. The statutes say the employment policy will be adopted, and the employment policy could also include a reference to this. So there we have flexibility, and it could basically become a recommendation. The thing with the statutes is that it's true that we're now speaking about employment and we are focusing on these issues, but there are other relevant issues for ERIC. And then you can ask the same question: why should we also include reference to other documents in different areas? And there's usually no end to that. So the statutes should be a really high-level document. In my view, this should be concise, not going too much specificities on the various areas. For that, you have other layers of, let's call, acts. You have rules of procedures, you have terms of reference, you have policies, you have agreements within the ERIC. So you need to always pitch correctly what you're trying to do. But if it is a matter which let's say the ERIC forum considers to be of great importance, so it could definitely be included in, I would say in the article that we already have on employment policy, and refer to that, or that the employment policy will refer to that specifically.
Thank you very much. Everything is clear.
There is a question from the public. Then I have a question for Dario too. Eva.
Thank you very much for the presentations. I have a question around how to align with the national regulations, with the national frameworks, because the European framework, as I had said, is mostly giving us a general framework with guidelines and the minimal terms to move forward. But for me, the most challenging part is to align with the national frameworks and how to elaborate from that. So in both cases, in the cases of single sites and distributed sites, you have as a limitation for ERICs the national law, and how to deal with that, and how to accommodate these provisions, and build on top of that an attractive framework for workers, for researchers and research managers to join the ERIC. I think this is the most complicated part, in my opinion. So for me, this EU employment contract proposal that you wanted to deliver here in the future cannot address all the national frameworks at European level, but needs to address the topic in any case. How to do it, I don't know, because it's a complex thing. But for me, it's the most limiting factor in the developing an employment policy. So this is my comment, also a question, but if I really would like the Ohad and Laura to answer if it's possible.
Yes, I think you are right, Eva, and it is also stated in Laura mentioned that as well. We cannot, you cannot do something against the law, and labor law is regulated in all countries. So you cannot decide that you go against that. You need to. It's exactly linked to the point I've made. We cannot go to the European Commission and expect them to issue in the ERIC regulation something which is actually against national law, if the Commission does not have exclusive competence for that. Right, so that's why we're having these difficulties. The reality today is that labor law is regulated in every country, and it has differences as well within the countries. We cannot avoid it, and we are ERICs. We are very nice, important. We received a lot of attention from the European Commission. We have our own regulation, but that's the point. We have to identify according to the topic where does it fit, and if national law sets a certain requirement, which they all do in many of the aspects, then it's quite difficult for us. We need to move to an area of best practice guidance and try to identify areas where we can, at least in my view, create a standardized. So ERICs can discuss among themselves, understand each other. When they understand that if they apply for one ERIC, the recruitment procedure would be similar to what they have been facing in another ERIC, or the positions. I think that Laura and Ornela have mentioned that before me. Some in the reported list, some of the positions are somehow you have sort of documents that support that. But if the expectation is to come now and create our own world like an international organization is doing, when they have of course that's not possible, because many of the items are already very highly regulated, and we know that you will have to, when you have situations when one person is established in country A and they work for an ERIC that is based in country B, we already know we have issues. We know that the law, there's something which is called the Rome 1 treaty about people that work in one country and provide work employed by another country. You have these difficulties, you have to address them, and I can't see. I mean, there are ways to improve, and that's why we need to identify what the soft parts, really the soft parts. We will not be able to change the national laws, maybe in very extreme cases.
Exactly, I very much agree with the whole reconstruction. One of the main scopes of our survey of the studies of the first part of our project was actually identifying precisely which topics are ruled by the law, and for those topics we will be able to do nothing but providing the ERICs with a view of what's happening in different countries as to they are able to assess themselves towards against the context, but no anything else. While in the spaces which are not hardly regulated by national laws, here we are trying to identify the space, the room for proposing something that, as Hoat correctly defined, they can be soft, a kind of soft best practice guidelines, references, which can be put at the ERIC disposal, but again with the full autonomy of choosing if and how to apply it in a way that can lead to a greater uniformity, but it should be completely a bottom-up process, and in no way, in no aspect, in contrast with the national European labor systems.
Thank you, Laura. There is a question from Claudia.
Thank you, Valentina. I am totally aware that this is not the scope of today's workshop, but just maybe an idea for the future. I totally agree with Ohad was saying, that there is a national laws and you cannot go above that. And I want to add the further element that, of course, there are ERICs which are hosted by non-EU countries and that have nodes in non-EU countries. You know, the UK, Switzerland, Israel, there are countries involved that they are not part of the EU. Then I was wondering if, for the work package, if we could have another event, maybe at the very least to inform, to have an exchange of view with colleagues in those countries, to see if the situation is the same, maybe exactly the same what we are talking about, or if there is additional issues.
Thank you, Claudia, for the suggestion. We will discuss internally if and how we could do it. Now I have a question for Dario. Currently, I understood that the Commission is the Commission's actions are more focused on researchers, or at least you are a little bit more advanced for the researchers' careers. And ERIC's actions are more likely to be focused on management and support professions. Do you see any room to exploit the potential complementarity of these two approaches?
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, you're right. On researchers' careers, we are more advanced. We now have this Council recommendation that I presented. There is, of course, the Charter for Researchers, and before we already had the Charter and Code for Researchers. So this is out of doubt that we are more advanced. But the reason why we are more advanced, I want to underline, is not because of the higher importance of the researcher profession, but simply for a matter of maturity and recognition at member states level, which until now has been different when it comes to research managers and other research support professions. So that is actually why when we proposed the Council recommendation on research careers, we decided that even though we were not at that stage able to do more, we would at least give a proper recognition to these professions. And this, I think, was a very important starting point. And certainly there is a lot going on, in particular when it comes to research management. I presented what is currently being done in the context of Action 7, or what has already been done in the context of this Action 17 of the previous ERA policy agenda, and the work that will continue in the context of the new ERA policy agenda. And I think that the fact that we well, I still remember, even though I was not in charge of this action on research management, but I still remember that when it all started, since there was a rule that actions would go ahead if at least half of the member states would commit to those actions. I remember that at the beginning, that threshold was not reached. So because member states were not really ready, or perhaps they didn't even really understand what research management would mean. Then luckily this threshold was reached, and then I think that a lot has been delivered in the context of this action, and a lot will continue to be delivered. And already the fact that we see a possibility of a European Charter for research managers on the table, it already means a lot. So I think that, as I said when I did my presentation, the Council recommendation on research careers is really very important. It also sets a sort of path that could be followed at European level, also for research management, and in the future also for research technicians or any other support profession. So that is my view, and I hope that in terms of timeline, it will take too long, but I think it's a process which already started.
Thank you very much, Dario. Thank you very much for the support. I think is for us very important to be in contact with your department and with the Commission for these actions. Indeed, one of the aims of our project is to explore legislative initiatives to implement the proposal, and we will like also to ask you, is there any step or specific action that you would like to suggest, to point out to us at this stage to guide our future strategies?
So when it comes to legislative initiatives, I actually have to refer back to what Ohad was saying, which is a matter of competences, which of course limit our activities for good reasons, I would say, because I mean the European Union is based on treaties, and at the moment the treaties speak that way. So according to the current EU structure, that is the way of working, and we need to respect these competences. Of course, as it always happens in when it's about law, things evolve, interpretations evolve. So we hope that we will be able, I mean, even the ERIC regulation itself was a novelty when it was introduced, and I think it's a great thing. So I think that even in terms of doing something more at EU level to further support research careers, I think, I mean, it is something on which we need certainly to reflect, but I think that there is a certain political momentum around all of this, which could help. I mentioned that we have the ERA Act on the table. Actually, it is more than on the table, because it was mentioned in the Competitiveness Council with 3 clear strands that it should cover. So now, of course, we need to see how we could address those strands, including the one on supporting researcher mobility of researchers, and I think that your input will be very important in that context. Your input in the context of the development of this framework on which you are working, but also I would actually invite you perhaps to participate in the call for evidence and in the public consultation that will be soon launched. You will be able, if you want to participate as ERICs or as research organizations, I mean, you can put forward your ideas, and we will see then what we can actually do, juggling between competences. Certainly, as Ohad was saying, there are different instruments right now that you can think of, and also a possible mixture of instruments could be considered. I will say that if there will be a revision of the ERIC regulation, you could try to work on that. I say you because I'm not in charge of this, but of course, when I say you, it means also you in connection with colleagues in the European Commission that are dealing with the ERIC regulation. So that is something which could be considered, because of course, once again, competences do not allow to do everything, but if you manage to introduce something in the regulation, since the regulation comes on top of national laws, then you could already there get somewhere. The ERA Act is another regulation that we will adopt, but yeah, I mean, I will repeat myself. I'm not just able at this stage to say what will be included in it, so I'm not really able to say more at this stage, even though I think that based on your discussions, on the results of your survey, on the work that you are doing, perhaps we could try to come up with a proposal of a sort of template for a European contract, employment contract, that could include at least some aspects and not others, focusing on what we can do and what we can do according to the competences. But I mean, this is just personal view in a very initial stage at Commission level of the work on the ERA Act. So I think I'm really not able to say more, but I hope that we will get somewhere to something useful and interesting.
Thank you, Dario. Thank you again. Yeah, I think I don't know if there are any more questions from the public. I don't see any hands. No. Just to remind you, if you want to give your reply to the survey in Mentimeter, I put the code in the chat. We have still some minutes to close the event before showing the result. So, Ornela, do you want to conclude, or do you want me to present the result of the survey? Okay.
Okay, yes. I was trying to write some lines while we were discussing, so this is not comprehensive of everything, but it's just some thoughts, first reactions. So we got very useful comments. First, I would like to thank all the speakers, because really also very interesting panel, a lot of food for thought. So I really thank everyone who contributed. We got very many useful comments from the community. So, for example, the interest in the economic treatment, the need to stress the overhead for ERICs to employ personnel, the need to foresee a budget for the increase in to support the career progression. So these are different elements that rotate around the work we are doing. So we need to see whether we can incorporate this somehow, but it's very good that we keep them in mind to see if and how we can approach them. There is also the opportunity to involve other organizations interested in the topics. There was actually the interest of 2 organizations. I took note, but we will see if we can disseminate these widely, so any organization who is interested to participate can contribute to this work. And there was also the suggestion for future workshops, for example, employment issues on associated or third countries. I welcome all the suggestions. That we need to see what we can do in the framework of this specific work package. So we will see, but thank you, because we will discuss how we can implement this. From the panel and how to proceed, how to move on in the future, we saw that there is a scope for collaboration with the GRTD, which is very positive. There is a political momentum, so it's a good moment to be discussing these topics. And Dario, thank you for your insights. We were aware that there was a lot of progress in terms of research careers. We were not aware why this wasn't happening at the same pace for research managers, but now it's clear, so we can see how to frame better also any proposal. You mentioned also this call for evidence on a public consultation, so we take note and we will try to participate and also to disseminate this amongst the other ERICs so they can participate as well. Also, as you both, Ohad and Dario suggested, we need to explore what is in the competence of the EU, so to see what is feasible for us as a future action, and what, in order to be effective, because we have limited resources, but we would like to do things that go in a direction which is feasible. And the other suggestion could be to standardize employment policy. So there is already, as mentioned by Ohad, a reference in ERIC statutes. So we could see how to use this reference and to link this employment contract. This is just first thoughts. We will try to produce something that is more elaborated, but just to conclude on how we think on moving on after this workshop with our task. And I will leave you now, Valentina, to present the results on which topics do our colleagues think we should prioritize.
I have to share my screen. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so here we can see the order of the priorities that we put in the Mentimeter. What aspect would you prioritize in the European Employment Framework for the ERICs? And at the first place, we have job classification and career paths. So I think that the support of Dario, the suggestion that Dario gave us is very thankful. So thank you again. And then we have the benefits and the remote work. And the next three are work schedule and hours flexibility, support pension scheme, annual leave, and temporary leaves. So I think that now we could start at least thinking how to work at least on the first three parts, and for sure we will keep updated all the participants in the ERIC forum about the activity. So from my side is again, thank you very much to the speakers and to the participants for being here. Ornella, the closure is yours.
I think I already managed just to thank everyone, really, because there was a contribution of a lot of ERICs in this work. And also the invited speakers gave a lot of value to what we are discussing. And thanks again to Dario, Ohad, and Laura, because you help us to address better our work and be more effective. Thank you very much.